You've just stepped into the Midlife Revolution Unleashed, your space to ignite possibility, redefine purpose, and embrace the power that comes with age and experience. Co-hosted by yours truly, Coach Wayne.
And I'm Coach Stacy M. Lewis. We are two seasoned coaches focused on the midlife community of color. This isn't just a podcast, it's a movement. In a world that sometimes forgets the power and the wisdom that comes with age, we are here to ignite a revolution and rewrite the narrative of this incredible journey.
So, whether you're navigating your career, growing your business, rediscovering passions, or challenging the status quo, this is your space. So, buckle up. Let's dive into the Midlife Revolution Unleashed. My favorite time of the day, favorite time of the week is when I get together with you and we talk about Midlife Revolution Unleashed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so exciting. So excited to see you once again, Coach Wayne. Welcome everyone to the Midlife Revolution Unleashed. I am your co-host, Coach Stacy M. Lewis. I'm a nonprofit executive, a lover of God and his people on most days, and a midlife women's coach. Let me introduce you to my handsome and well-articulated Coach Wayne.
Thank you, Stacy. I'm feeling super duper great. You know, I'm lying, right? Because I didn't get enough sleep, but I'm going to be super duper great. And thank you for joining us. This is Midlife Revolution Unleashed. I am Coach Wayne, the VIP coach. I work with Black men through midlife, helping them to land softer and bigger, better, bolder on the second half. So, Stacy, today we are going to talk about narratives and scripts and the fact that oftentimes here in midlife, we have scripts that we play in our heads and in our hearts. And we oftentimes don't let it go and how that gets in the way. And I think today we want to help those listening in to get some nuggets on how to rewrite our scripts.
That's right. Rewriting the narrative is something that we get to do. I think oftentimes we don't check in with ourselves and realize that it is the narrative, not the narrative that you're watching on Friday night television, but the narrative that is going on in your mind about who you are, about where you are, about what you've accomplished, about what you want, and about your capacity and the possibility of getting there. I think that we've all been handed a lot of scripts in life, from our childhood through school years, into our young adulthood, and now even in midlife, there are narratives to tackle. And so I'm excited that we're talking about this today, Coach Wayne. Last week, we talked about vision and the fact that you are still becoming the highest self that you are here to be. And so today we really get to hone in on the narrative that might be hindering your becoming. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
I'm liking that because, you know, what is real is that the narratives that we play and record in our head actually bring about how we do the becoming. If we tell ourselves through the script or narrative that we have that we're not worthy, that it's not possible, that the struggle is real, then I think we start performing and becoming that very thing that we are narrating and listening to.
Absolutely. So we have to ask ourselves the question, what story have you been telling yourself? And is it actually true?
Yeah. And a lot of times we find, you know how it is, we create the evidence to your point earlier in the green
Mhm.
room, we create the evidence that supports the story we tell ourselves. So if we tell ourselves something that's unreal, but we want to hold it to be true, guess what we do? We find the evidence to align with that.
That's right. We're building or creating our narrative, right, based on that false story. And so it really reminds me when I was growing up, Wayne, I we probably have talked about birth position before, but I don't remember. So I'm number two of four. And often being in the middle created experiences where I felt either unseen or unheard, or there's another descriptor in there. But really, this experience that said I mattered, but that it was possible in the mix that others mattered more. Therefore, their voice mattered more. Therefore,
Mm,
time mattered more for them. And I believe that those feelings really transferred or transitioned into young adulthood, that feeling unseen, or maybe some of that shrinking back, um, and really sidelining myself in ways because in my narrative, I was still unseen or
mm,
not to be heard as much because there were other competing voices. There was no room for me. And I can admit that it wasn't really until adulthood that I understood that that narrative was playing, and it was at the foundation of many decisions that I made and many actions that I took. And it was really facing that narrative and beginning that allowed me to begin to rewrite it. And the rewriting of it was a very powerful and empowering opportunity to play a bigger game, to show up as even more of myself.
Thanks for that vulnerability, Stacy. It's impactful because you're not alone. So
Mm,
many of us, based on our early years, are living with a narrative that no longer serves us.
right,
And
right.
we don't know how to shed it, right? We should shake it and move forward. But because it's been something that has become like a second skin, we don't shed it as well. You know, when you look at midlife men, the area of masculinity,
Hmm.
there are narratives that we have, and a lot of it has to do with culture too, right? How we were raised, with whom
Sure.
we were raised, where we were raised. And so masculinity looks different for men depending on their backgrounds. And the narrative that's pretty popular says that men got to show up a certain way. And
Hmm.
because we have that story, we deny ourselves sometimes from being our authentic self. So we imprison the part of us that wants to get out just so we can with just hang out with that narrative that we have had, that false narrative, as it were.
I think one of the other things we talked about in the green room was the concept of who's writing that narrative, right?
Yeah.
Who wrote that story? Oftentimes it wasn't us, just as you shared, those when impacted by society or societal norms, that that narrative of what masculinity should look like, right, is not written by the men themselves, right? It's the societal norm or the societal pressures that have said, like, this is what masculinity should look like, the cultural norms that have said this is what masculinity should look like. And therefore those are the narratives, those are the patterns and the behaviors that we're acting upon, as opposed to walking in the truth of who we are.
Yeah. And narratives impact our sense of self, our identity, no
Mhm.
doubt. But also it creates the paradigm by which we operate and do things. And you just mentioned, if it's our church, if it's the media,
Mhm.
the community that we serve, live, the sorority, fraternity, they create, in a sense, boundaries for us through the narratives or the scripts that they have in terms of how we show up. And we're oftentimes restricted because we restrict ourselves based
Mhm.
on that narrative that something or someone else had set for us. So the idea we're saying, Stacy, especially at midlife, is to give yourself permission to break free from the scripts that no longer serve you.
Absolutely. To break free of that conditioning, right? That story, that belief that we have about ourselves that's based on conditioning, not about the truth, not about clarity. So well said, Coach Wayne. Let's talk about some questions. Some questions maybe that you would ask or that we would ask. Um, a coaching client that was really struggling in this area. You want to go first?
Sure. So one of the things that I know is the what we call imprinting. When folks are young, say up until 7 years old, your early caregivers and the people you're around with create what we call psychological imprinting on you. And oftentimes that narrative, your 7 year old self, is showing up at 27.
Mm,
It's a script that no longer serves you. It's a script that says, maybe, no, don't do that. You can't do that. So we don't think that we're able to do things, and we carry that with us later on. And so a lot of times I think it's important when you have a narrative that still is in your head that somehow your soul doesn't feel right with it, it's not
mm,
fully you. You got to go back and question where it started or where it came from,
hmm.
and challenge that evidence, that narrative.
Absolutely. And a great question to do so would be whose voice shaped this story? Whose voice built this story in me, this narrative in me?
Yeah. And be okay with saying no to yourself. Again, we
Mm,
talked in a previous episode about saying no to others, right? Giving yourself permission to for time management and other things, say no. But we talk to ourselves even when nobody else is listening.
hmm.
And so we have to begin to say, no, this is not true. This doesn't make sense for us. It's not serving, it's disempowering, to the scripts that we have, that we're reading and that we're listening to, so that we can have a sense of reprieve and relief to move to the next level of narratives.
I like that saying no. Uh, in questioning or pushing ourselves in ways to really tackle the foundation of the narrative. And oftentimes we're saying no to ourselves. I don't really want to go there and dismantle or really start to understand that narrative. So I'm just going to brush over it. I'm not, or no, I won't look at it. I won't really deal with it. This is the time to really look at it, dismantle it, and ask yourself the question of, when did you stop questioning this narrative or this story, this negative narrative? What chapter of the story needs to be rewritten? And how can you go about dismantling the story in a way that gives you a foundation to rebuild it?
And Stacey, similar to when we are using technology, we are typing on your keyboard and you are editing, cutting, or erasing the script.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to just edit it, but you don't want to leave a blank page. So you also have to rewrite a script to overpower or overcome or succeed the no longer useful script. So, what is the script that you'd like to rewrite to replace the old narrative? That's important. And it's a question that we offer in coaching to challenge people to
Mm-hmm.
start rewriting the script that's more empowering, that's going to take them to where they want to be.
Love it. Love it. One of the ways I'm often approaching a conversation with a client is making sure that she is working on the problem from a place of power. It is difficult to dismantle that narrative when you are feeling like I'm not enough or feeling like I'm too much. Whatever that narrative is, it can be very difficult to challenge that narrative when you're immersed in it, when you're feeling powerless. And so, one of the ways when I'm working with a client is really to start from that place of power, reminding her or getting her to remind herself of what she's already overcome. In what ways maybe has the narrative showed up, but she's been able to dismantle it or ignore it or move past it, move beyond it. What truths really stand within her as well that allow her to really dismantle the narrative and begin to reclaim the victory over that narrative. So I do think that recognizing that, yeah, the narrative can feel powerful and sometimes all consuming. It can be difficult to tackle the narrative while immersed in the narrative. And so sometimes we have to step out of the narrative into the place, the mindset where we feel most powerful in order to then be able to confront and dismantle that negative narrative.
Yeah. Discomfort is part of growth. And when you've lived with a script or a narrative for a while, it by default tends to fall in a place of comfort and doesn't necessarily serve you, but it's been habitually what you're used to. And so, yes, you got to challenge yourself. And I'm glad, Stacy, that you're okay with challenging your clients, those women, to drop the comfort stuff and go to a new level where it's still untested and unseen, where they can start writing a new script. I think of a pencil parable, it's called, and I don't remember all of it, but
Mm-hmm.
I use it in the past when I was working with folks to describe the idea of, what a pencil is, right? Those
Mm-hmm.
old school yellow pencils oftentimes. And part of rewriting your narrative is, if you were to look at the parable of a pencil, it needs, remember that you can write on any surface, meaning when you're coming up with narratives, there is nothing stopping you from testing the water and from being innovative, and for there's no time limits writing on any surface. Then there is an eraser. In your own narrative, you can always make mistakes
Mm.
and rewrite the scripts by erasing what was gone. There is what's called, to your point, a painful sharpening, Stacy,
Mm.
when you're leaving discomfort and moving to a new narrative. And that's part of the pencil parable, right? And a great part of it is it has to be held in your hand. So as you write your narrative and you ask for discernment, connect with your greater self, your spiritual self, your God, right? Be held in the hand as you write this narrative so you're not alone. And lastly, one thing to remember is that what's most important as you write your narrative is what's on the inside. No matter how beautiful
Mm.
the pencil looks on the outside, what really matters is what's on the inside. So, to be relative to what we're talking about, it's going to be painful. You're going to make some mistakes. You're not alone. you have a bigger why, and go ahead and write your own script.
Hmm. I would say, sir, that was your gold of the week. That was so good and so apropos to today's conversation. Certainly, to our Midlife Revolution Unleashed audience, you just received a massive tip and tool to begin to move forward with rewriting your narrative. What is that? The pencil analogy?
The parable of the pencil.
The parable of a pencil. Well, let's
Yeah.
take that parable of a pencil and ask a couple of more, or give a couple of more strategies or tools that our audience can really take on, right? That with the foundation of that parable of a pencil. There is the story shift prompt, which is very easy for each of us to really implement, even if you only have 5 minutes. And it really is asking yourself, what is the old story? Is it I'm too late, I'm too old, I'm too tired, I'm too tall? What is the old story? Um, and then writing down with your pencil, what is the new truth? What is the truth about that area? I'm not too late. I'm right on time. God is on time. I shared a post recently, and it was talking about, reminding yourself that you are on time. You are still becoming, you are on time. And someone responded, yes, we serve an on time God. Yes, indeed. You are on time. That is the truth, that you are exactly where you're supposed to be. And you get to implement the pencil parable and begin to really write the truth about where you are and where you're going.
Great. I love those analogies and tie-ins, Stacy. The pencil maker, as he was taking up the pencil to explain the pencil's opportunities to rewrite itself, so to
Mhm.
speak, and to not, he did that because the pencil was actually comparing itself from across the way with the colored markers
Mm.
and saying, wow, look at those beautiful colored markers. I wish I could be like those. But remember, part of rewriting your own story is to not compare yourself with the markers, with somebody else's story, to be sure that you are prayerful, that you're mindful, that you're reaching within yourself as you rewrite your story. And it's funny because as we go through this right now here in the US, with history being bottled in a different sort of way, so to speak, for folks of color, we have to make sure that we are not having other people tell our story, and that we are telling the story from our eyes, our mouths, and our experiences right now.
Yeah. And yeah, I totally agree. There was so much there. And once you got into the realm of, kind of what's happening societally, um, we can acknowledge that even what's happening societally now impacts the narrative that we are currently operating on. It impacts the truth of
Yeah,
those narratives. And we really have to position ourselves to constantly check in with ourselves and check those narratives. Um, One exercise to implement is using the voice notes on your phone and talking out that narrative, whatever that is, and combating it with truth. Some people believe in affirmations, some people declarations, but combating those negative or false narratives with the truth. And then you are able to play back what you've said about yourself, which is what you're thinking about yourself, and hear the truth about what you've said and what you're thinking about yourself, and really begin to put that truth on replay in your mind and in your daily practice in a way that starts to eliminate or dismantle that negative narrative.
You know, Stacy, in in addition to what you just said, I think a nugget for folks to go by is to give themselves a fast. And
Mm.
with food fast is important, but I'm talking
Mhm.
about like a media and a news fast every now and again, because
Mhm.
if you allow yourself to be bombarded with what's out there in terms of social media, in terms of the traditional news, it's going to be pretty hard to break through and escape to write the narrative that is befitting to your authentic self. So many other guardrails prevent that if you allow that. So I would say sometimes, Stacy, it's good to guide the folks that we work with to, we're not saying throw your phone away, but to give yourself times. Don't start your day, for example, give yourself a
Mhm.
fast. Don't start your
Mhm.
day before you meditate or do your morning routine. Don't start looking at social media. That's an easy one.
I agree. It's a super easy one and an extremely powerful one,
Yeah.
because it is, what are you letting in, right? The ear gate, the eye gate. What are you letting in that is then impacting your narrative? And
Yeah.
oftentimes, we've talked about this before, that social media in and of itself can be great, can be informative, can be funny. It can also be a place where people are not necessarily living or showing their authentic lives. And what you're then taking in or comparing yourself to is someone else's something,
Mm-hmm.
false story, someone else's glammed up, not their authentic. It is definitely important to fuel yourself in a way that allows you to even have the mental acuity and the spiritual fortitude to combat some of the foolishness, whether it's on the news or on social media, especially when you start your day.
I like when how you say foolishness, Stacy.
Foolishness.
Foolishness.
The
That's so
foolishness.
foolishness. In the green room, Stacy, you had mentioned, you reminded me of the acronym for FAIR.
Hmm.
And a lot of times we don't move forward because we are tuned into false evidence appearing real. So, to your point, we're listening to foolishness, we're listening to false evidence that because it shows up on the 7 o'clock news, it creates that sense of it's news, but the narrative is not doing us right. It's corrupted, it's lopsided, it's false evidence that appears real, and we are fearful of
Yes.
moving forward with what we know innately to be true. So want to dispel that myth that because it was said by an official or a leader, that it's worth tuning into.
Well said. So, to our revolution, what's one part of your story you're ready to reclaim and rewrite? This is your time. This beautiful season of midlife really is a season of wisdom. It is a season of resilience. And it is a season where we have to remind ourselves that we have the permission to rewrite the script. With that, Sir Wayne, we just want to remind the folks that we are the Midlife Revolution Unleashed. Wayne, tell the people how they can reach you.
Hit me up. Just go on my site, viptransformativeliving.com. Lots of handles out there, and you can subscribe to my newsletter. Check out the podcast, and no shame in the game. DM me. It's free.
I think he's going to put that on his t shirt. DM me. It's free. I
That's
want to
right.
invite all midlife women of color to the Midlife Sisters Collective. Certainly, you are welcome to DM me if that is something that you'd like more information about. I am Coach Stacy. I can be reached at thestacymlewis.com. Yet, if you are seeing this on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, you know how to reach me. Wayne and I, you can also find our contact information in your favorite podcast player's footer. So check out the Midlife Revolution Unleashed. It is always our pleasure to spend this time with you.
That's for sure. So thank you all for tuning in, and you know where to find us. We'll be here, same place, same time next week on Midlife Revolution Unleashed. Stacy, have yourself a wonderful rest of the afternoon.
Yes, you do the same, Coach Wayne. And to our audience, he'll see you at the top. I'm cheering you on.
Bye now. And there you have it, folks. This week's episode of the Midlife Revolution Unleashed. Hey, we truly appreciate your spending this time in this space with us. Join us next week at the same time as we dive into relevant topics and present solutions to spark new thinking and empower your midlife journey.
And don't forget, if you enjoyed today's episode, let us know in the comments and share it with others. And of course, remember to subscribe, share, like, hit that notification bell. You are the Midlife Revolution Unleashed. I'm Coach Stacy, and I'm cheering you on.
And I'm Coach Wayne, and I'll see you at the top.